like the way this feel, yeah. Let my soul cry, yeah, yeah, yeah. Minister, we gonna speak from the heart on this one. I'm performing lyrical funerals, no obituary. I killed your boy and brought him back to life, pet cemetery. My anointing not based on attendance at a seminary. Scarlet witches, they attracted to the visionary. Everywhere I go, I bring the word with me, missionary. Soldier drafted in the war machine, military. Pay attention, what I'm saying to you, legendary. You got the demeanor of a front desk secretary. That mean you take the calls, but you don't make the calls. That's why you hate, cause ain't nothing fake about me at all. Now I dare you try to say that with a straight face. My delivery in tip-top great shape. I'm too advanced for you, light years, space age. No evolution for you cavemen, stone age. I'm a thoroughbred, rock solid. I came from the bottom to the top, rock climbing. I grew up in the hood, pros and cons. That's that full court pressure when the amalanche roll out the stretch. Why can't you see it's not logical? If you live diabolical. Boy, your point of view smaller than the hair follicle molecule. This for all of them that follow you, smoking all of them barbecue. When I pull up, your voice don't correct itself with no auto-tune. I got a whole nother level that I can enter whenever I gotta deal with the devil. I pick a whole nother method. I hear a whole lot of yapping. They wanna see my reaction. Really out here in the community making it happen. I don't really think they understand the dilemma. They ain't looking in the man in the mirror. I can't say it in the clearer. The plan is very simple. It's time to start playing in the temple. Before somebody come and put the can on your temple. Reaching like a baby with his hand for the nipple. The Grand Reaper coming with his hand on the circle. In the van coming with a ram with it, with the van coming get him. I am so glad that I changed up. Made it out of where I came from. Watch for the sliding hook of the slow ball, fastball, and that change up. That ghetto lifestyle, it changed us. Go back to visit, it ain't changed much. Only difference is now the way that my brain process information. And Satan, but after my license, day one, let me say something. Only reason that I'm still alive today because God's grace is amazing. Just another raisin in the sun. Dream deferred when things occurred. Now you getting served right on the curb like a lemonade stand. I just gave you the benediction, let the whole church say amen. But I choose to walk in the spirit is difficult, dealing with all of the ignorance. But in the Bible and still talking about the Bible, what is the benefit? Everything about you counterfeit, there ain't no rebuttal you can counter with. On the internet, you the master teacher, in real life, you powerless. Keep it real with you, I don't have time for this, I ride for this, my forefathers died for this. They cry for this opportunity, presently I possess, and right now you are the opposite. If you walk in love, you fulfill the law, don't get involved and you ain't giving it all. If you ever think it's cool to threaten another man's family, then you already lost. Chemtrails got aluminum, heavy metal saturate the atmosphere. Manhattan Project, time travel, Mandela effect, what happened here? GMO food processing to the whole world become obsolete. A black man who believes in Jesus got my own team taking shots at me. You trespassing on property that you don't fully understand properly. All the back and forth, that's not for me, that's for ROC and the War Machine. If we ride together, then we ride together. If we can't do it, I'd rather leave. I still stand on the word of God till the day I die and no longer breathe. We trapped inside the diaspora, nightmares of the massacre. Cold sweat, I'm below deck in the middle passage, just a passenger. Revolutionary hardcore, liberation, that's a hard job. You ain't ready, you a oddball, keep your mouth closed like lockjaw. I learned trying to bring people together on the same page, make them separate. All the talk about reconciliation, when the time come, you hesitate. If Jesus was able to sit at the table with a bunch of sinners, you very fake. Your steps ordered by the Lord, and how it was yesterday, a big mistake. We the city sitting on the hill. Guess it all depends on how you live. Guess it all depends on how you feel, and we both know that ain't God's will. I stood on what I felt was right, I don't never question if God's real. Trapped inside this matrix, I'm about to pop the red and the blue pill.
Bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, said the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:14.
Peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swainell, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka the Seven Pillar Saracen, aka Brother Moore. How y'all doing this afternoon? I pray all is well with y'all. Real quick, I wanted to bring a preview to a bigger show I'm going to do with Brother Yahuchanan. Yeah, real quick, I wanted to show a piece of a conversation that Yahuchanan, I, and Brother Faithful to God had on Brother Garfield's channel concerning DNA and DNA arguments, to which I thought was very interesting, and a bunch of interesting concepts and arguments came out. Afterwards, I'll probably give a little bit of commentary, not too much, but me and Yahuchanan will be doing a further show where we recap the whole conversation and go in on a whole bunch of stuff. But with that, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to get into this, family. Like I said, I pray all is well with y'all. I pray all is well with you and yours. I got the video linked down below as well. And before I get into this, I know Garfield don't got an issue with it, but just cause.
Tend to argue typically for this subject, and that's why.
Okay, no. Let me hear Orthodox Moor. Maybe he has a different spin that we have.
Hey, what's going on, Orthodox Moor? He's a
peace and blessings to the chat. Peace and blessings to the panel. Yeah, I'm not here to say no, but I'm here to understand what the arguments are. I'm tuning in late. I'm here. I heard Faithful talking. And I wanted to understand what him and you and I was breaking down.
Okay, can I just very briefly explain? Okay, so what?
Sure.
It seems to be the case that whenever Yahuchanan has these discussions with people, he likes to put an emphasis on thinking that he's an Israelite and all that. And I never called you a fake Jew, Yahuchanan. If I did, then I apologize if I said that to you. What I said is, can you demonstrate your claim? And the only reason I'm saying that is because it feels like you put an unhealthy emphasis on that. And so I said, well, the Bible, if we're going to go with the Bible, it gives us a consistent narrative that the lineage is traced paternally. And this is found in Numbers chapter 1, verse 2. And Semitic cultures are patriarchal societies, so they trace their genealogies through the father side. Even, and I believe Orthodox Moor, you can attest to this, that Arab cultures to this day generally trace the genealogy through the paternal side, the father's side. That's how the inheritance is typically passed down. Even from a father to his daughter, it still has to be a father who has this inheritance, and he passes it down to his daughter. So I'm explaining to him that if he's going to use the argument for genealogy, then he has to demonstrate it paternally. His paternal DNA is, I think, R1BV88, and that DNA existed in the region of, I believe, West Africa before there was a nation of Israel. So I think it's imperative for him to tell us how is he determining this. So he said autosomally. So it could just be basically your mother's mother, or your mother's father, your mother's mother, all your DNAs combined. And then just from there, if you find that you have a connection with some community, whether it's a connection through pure maternal descent or whether paternal descent, regardless, because he's told us he can't determine how he connects with these different communities. He's basically just arguing just as long as you have a connection, some connection, therefore you're Abraham's seed via descent.
Okay, just want to understand your argument. Let's just say it was maternal descent, right? What's the issue with that biblically? Just so I understand what you're saying.
Oh, so biblically, the only exception clause that we see is found in Numbers 27:8. If a man has no sons but daughters, so meaning if a person doesn't have any male descendants, then he traces the
That's
lineage.
talking about inheritance, though. We're talking about
inheritance. That's
There's
exactly no. So that's what I was gonna. So inheritance is traced through your genealogy, meaning that whatever your household, your father has, he gives it to his child, his male heir, the firstborn, typically.
Mhm.
So what ends up happening in the case of this, there's a man who had no sons but daughters. So then the rule was put in place that if a man only has daughters, then his firstborn daughter would receive the inheritance, taking the place of, she would substitute the male inheritor. So she becomes the male inheritor. So the genealogy, the lineage, whenever his genealogy is recorded, it would be recorded through his daughter. So it goes from the father to the daughter for that one generation, and then back to, if she has a male child, whenever she has a male child, through that son, through subsequent generations.
Okay, just so I'm clear, is it your position that the nation of Israel only comprised of tribal Israel?
No, absolutely not. There were converts, and the converts were considered one with the people. So you could be an Israelite by bloodline or an Israelite by conversion.
Okay. Is it your position that the converts are numbered with tribal Israel?
In the census that was taken by Solomon, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there was also a census that was taken. Yes, the converts were divided from the physical bloodline Israelites. However, they're counted as one people, so they're counted as being a part of the nation of Israel. So the stranger, so you'll typically see ger in the Hebrew indicating the stranger. The stranger there would indicate the convert, the proselyte. So they are counted as one people, if we're just talking generally speaking. But when the census is taken, it's clearly shown, for example, when Solomon takes the census, that the strangers are counted individually, apart from the physical descendants.
There's a census of the sojourners, are you saying?
Yes, there's a census that was done of the stranger. Yes.
Okay, so both are counted, correct?
Both are counted. Yes, both are counted. Absolutely.
So, there are situations to where you can't, like, so my mother's going to be an Israelite and my father's going to be of another nation, right? Some situations like that have arisen historic. That's even in the Bible.
Yes, that's the example that I gave of the exception clause. So in 1 Chronicles chapter 2, I believe, verse 31 through 35, Sheshan has no sons but daughters. So there's where Numbers 27:8 would come into play. So we see his lineage being carried through the woman. And we know it's through the woman because in verse 31, if I'm not mistaken, it says Ahlai, that would be his daughter. So Ahlai, the daughter, is the person through whom his descendancy is being traced through. So when it says he has no sons but daughters and gave his Egyptian servant to his daughter to marry, the lineage is not being traced through the Egyptian servant; it's being traced through the daughter. So you notice, because Jarha is the name of the Egyptian servant, yet the child's name, the name of the child is Ahlai. So that would be the daughter.
So in that particular case, what's the issue with the autosomal claim? Just so I understand.
The autosomal claim basically, and I say this respectfully because I know you take the same position, but the autosomal claim, at least I feel you take the same position, because I've seen a few of your live streams where you talk about where you believe that you could be an Israelite.
I interviewed a few people, but I've never made my public position known on this.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, then I apologize. Maybe I'm misconstruing it. You're familiar with Abu, right?
Very familiar, yeah.
Yes, I know you guys speak a lot, and so he's tried to familiarize me a lot with your position. I watched some of your videos. It seems to be the case. Let me be more exact and precise with my language. It seems to be the case that you tend to take a position that favors autosomal DNA. Now, I'm not saying you're taking outright autosomal DNA. That was incorrect to assume that. It seems like you favor it. Would that be incorrect of me to say?
That would be incorrect.
Okay, could you explain to me what your position is?
My position is not the topic of the discussion right now. I'm trying to understand what was going on when I came in.
No, but this isn't a hot seat discussion, so I wanted to know what your
right,
position.
And I'm still trying to understand what your position is. I'm not trying to grill you. I'm just trying. We got. Hold on, real quick. We got to the crux of what I was trying to understand.
I know, but hold on a second. We got to the crux, and I was answering very cordially.
Okay.
Could you at least?
Long story short. No, I'm trying to answer your question real quick.
I know, but you're not. Okay, I'm sorry.
try to answer your question quick. So long story short, I believe you can be Israel through your mother, through your father, or through sojourning.
Okay, so then you are in essence theoretically arguing for autosomal because autosomal accounts for both mother and father.
Partially, yeah.
Okay, so then I was correct in that assumption. Then.
Almost. That's what I said. Like it gets real tricky with it. But okay, so I laid out the basic right quick. So can we get back to the whole part to where like what's the issue?
Yes. No, I was explaining to him that since he doesn't believe in the concept of rabbinic Judaism, right? He believes in a sola scriptura viewpoint of Scripture. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, if you're going to take that sort of a position, mm-hmm. then the only way that you're going to be able to account for lineage is paternally speaking, since that's the normative position that is taken in the Scriptures. In other words, generally speaking, not you have the exception clause, of course, Numbers 27 and verse 8. You have the exception clause, but that exception
clause, you
clause,
just cited from Chronicles.
Yes, and the exception clause is not the norm. What it is it's the exception. If you don't have any sons, then you have to, for a generation, not 5 generations, not 10 generations, for a generation, trace the lineage through the mother. Then when she has a male inheritor, the lineage is then once again traced through the male and in his subsequent males, which is what we see with Athalai's son. I believe his name was Attai, and then Attai begat his son, and then his son begat and so on and so on. So we continue to see that consistent narrative.
So I'm super lost on your point. So you just cited something from Numbers and you just cited something from Chronicles, right?
Yes,
so where you just hold on. I haven't even finished my breath yet. Okay,
I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
Appreciate you. So you just cited 2 different concepts of male lineage, and then also to where lineage was kind of through a female and an Egyptian father. So my question to you is, what's inconsistent biblically with what Yahuchanan is saying and in the Bible?
Okay, are you done, right? I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, 100% done. I'm just trying to understand what the biblical inconsistency is, not your opinion on rabbinic Judaism. I'm talking about biblical.
Of course, yes. No, but I'm telling you what our discussion was hinging upon, because various things were brought out before you came in, so I wanted to catch you up to speed on everything, right? Okay. There were various things that were proposed by others, not necessarily for myself, but others like Garfield. So the question that you asked is why. So can you repeat the question one more time, because I want to answer it.
Two questions. Do you agree with it? Do you agree with Yahuchanan in terms of like the absolute concept? And second of all, what would be inconsistent biblically with what he's saying about autosomal DNA, which you decided about promise?
Do you asking if I agree with his concept of autosomal DNA?
No, about there being multiple haplogroups
multiple haplogroups. So because you had asked a question about you asked me to clarify, or maybe I'm misconstruing what you're saying. Did you ask me to clarify about Numbers 27 and 8 and First Chronicles 2?
I'm asking.
You said you didn't understand why I brought that up, so I could explain.
No. I 100% understand why I brought it up. My simple question is this:
okay, so now to answer your question.
Hold on. Let me clarify the question, because you seem like you have a hard time with the question. So the question is this: so what is inconsistent with Yahuchanan's autosomal argument and what you decided from Chronicles?
Okay, so what's inconsistent is that the biblical narrative, the normative narrative, is paternal side, father side. The genealogy is traced through the males, right? The inconsistency with his autosomal DNA argument is that he says, well, it doesn't matter if it's male or female, meaning that you could have all females, like a mother who has another, like you have the DNA that basically all your maternal DNA. If one of those, if even a small percentage, traces you back to some Jew somewhere, then therefore you are now Abraham's seed. The problem with that reasoning is that if we're going by the consistent narrative of not only the ancient Near East, because patriarchal societies are a known thing within Semite cultures, all the different cultures, even before there was an Israel, before the Bible was composed down, Semitic cultures traced their lineages through the father side. Now, the reason why I brought that up is if he's going to go with a sola scriptura, since he and I both deal with the scriptures, with the Bible, if he goes with a consistent sola scriptura position, then he has to account for the norm being the male side and not the idea of the exception clause, because the exception clause is only there in case a man only has daughters and no sons.
Got you. Here's where I understand what you're saying. If Yahuchanan's making a claim that he's the real Jew and there's no other Jew out there, right? Like there's like anyone else claiming it who looks a different skin tone, etc., is a fake Jew, etc. But that's not what he said in any way, shape, or form. So the simple question is this, and I would appreciate just an honest yes or no. So is what he's saying about autosomal DNA and connecting to the nation of Israel inconsistent with what you read inside of Chronicles? Just simply yes or no. Is it inconsistent?
Yes, I believe it's inconsistent, and I'd like to explain why. I don't believe it's inconsistent with the notion that you have an exception clause that does allow for the lineage for at least a generation to be traced to a woman. However, what he's arguing for could, in theory, just posit autosomally, if we're talking about DNA autosomally, posits the idea that if you have any connection anywhere to some Jew, we don't know if this is their maternal connection versus your maternal connection, right? And they have different DNA. So, for example, let's say you did GEDmatch and you found out that you're connected to Moroccan Jews. But GEDmatch doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you if your maternal DNA. It doesn't tell you which one of your DNAs, what part of your genetic makeup. So let's say in theory you have a Moroccan Jew, because Moroccan Jews are a diverse population, and I wanted to. And I apologize if I'm being very long in how I replied.
No, you know we could actually use me. We can actually use me as a perfect example.
Because I'm going to lose my thought.
Got you.
So Moroccan Jews have diversity within their population, same as Ashkenazim, same as Sephardic Jews. So, for example, you have various Y haplogroups, paternal haplogroups, right? You can have, for example, in Sephardic Jewry, you have J1, you have J2, you have Q, you have R1b, you have E1b1b, et cetera, right? You have T, you have, all these other haplogroups. So the genetic diversity within Sephardim shows the reality of the matter that one, Jews made converts, because all of these DNAs cannot, in theory, descend from the same male progenitor. They have to have different male progenitors. Therefore, it accounts for the reality of conversion, which we know Jews absolutely did in the dispersion, especially when they went into these different areas. And then secondly, what it does is it shows that when we're using GEDmatch and stuff like that, that it's not the case that the Moroccan Jews are being traced paternally. It's any part of their genetic makeup. So in the same way that Moroccan Jews also have a spectrum of diversity, they have J1, J2, E1b1b, Q, T, etc. If Yahuchanan, for example, we know this for a fact, he has, because he told us his DNA. His paternal DNA is R1bV88. Either he is genetically related to a Moroccan Jew who has R1bV88, or Moroccan Jews, let me be more exact, Moroccan Jews who have that same haplogroup paternally, or they both share the same maternal haplogroup. If we're just going with maternal, remember that they don't test, when the women they don't test them for paternal side, father side. So it could be the case that this woman's mother or whatever her DNA makeup, any part of her makeup, father side, mother side, is being accounted for with this person. And the reason that I think that it's difficult for him to prove that position in light of the scriptures, going back to the initial premise, is if he's going to take a sola scriptura position and reject the rabbinic tradition, which does account for maternal lineage, right, consistently, then he has to reconcile the fact that the Bible only gives the norm, the general rule of thumb, without the exception clause, as being paternal side.
May I speak real quick?
Yeah, but we're just one last question. Like, so for the record, so you're stipulating that like the Aliyah law that Israel has, and everyone is claiming to be a Jew via that Aliyah law is incorrect in how they're doing so. Correct?
The Aliyah, you're talking about the
right of return.
Yes, I'm not arguing for that. My argument doesn't hinge.
No. I'm just trying to hold on. I'm not saying you're arguing. I'm trying to make sure you're clear. I'm just trying to be clear that so anyone that's claiming maternal descent via that law, you're saying is not a Jew.
No. So my argument hinges on what we're.
So they are Jews.
No, hold on a second, Orthodox Moor, because you asked me a question. You got to let me answer, right? I didn't even take a breath, and you're already interrupting it. So let me address your question.
It was a yes no question. You said no. It's my fault.
No. Hold on a second.
It was my apologies, but it was a yes no question.
It's a loaded question, though. So I'm going to explain why I believe it's a loaded question. Because the presupposition seems to be from your end, assuming that I believe whatever rabbinic Jews say about themselves. So the state of Israel has the law of return.
There was no presupposition.
So hold on a second.
I asked a simple question about a law.
So then I'm going to ask for clarity, so you can let me finish.
Okay.
And then
you don't got to raise your voice, bro.
I know I'm not raising my voice. This is
you
just
literally
my mic. I'm just very close to my mic right now. See,
then back up.
It's not gonna. You see how it's okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. So then what I'm trying to do is, and hopefully everyone can hear me, because sometimes people say I sound low and because of this mic that I'm using. So the question is, so I can get clarity from you in what you're asking me.
You already answered the question.
Are you under the assumption that I believe in the rabbinic Jewish or?
I'm under no assumption about what you believe. That's why I asked you questions.
You said they're not. So you asked the question according to the law of return. So if I don't agree with their rule of the law of return, does that somehow negate me believing that some of them could be paternally descendants of Jacob?
Say that one more time.
So because I disagree with their law of return, the state of Israel's law of return, does that somehow negate me believing that some of them can paternally be descendants of Jacob?
I can honestly care less. It would just make you consistent ideologically. That's all.
Okay, so then my consistent narrative is this. I believe that that many Jews, that people from the Hebrew Israelite side, not talking about you or anyone else, because I know you don't necessarily identify with the Hebrew Israelite rhetoric. I'm just speaking for the Hebrew Israelites because there are many who are watching in the live chat. You know, the Hebrew Israelites, many of them reject Jews, Ashkenazi, even Sephardic Jews, a lot of them. Right?
Sure.
Not all
you can debate them.
Right, I know that. So then, because I know what Yahuchanan's position is. Cool. So then the thing that I am trying to tell you, though, is that if we're going to go with a narrative based on what the scriptures are telling us, and that narrative is the norm is a consistent paternal lineage, I believe there are Ashkenazis, not all, because I certainly don't believe all Ashkenazis are physical descendants of Jacob. I believe many of them are on their father's side descended from Jews, from bloodline Jews. I do believe that there is a portion of them that are certainly descended from Jews on their father's side. But as far as the question that you asked, I think it's malformed because I don't agree with their position on the law of return. To say, do I think they're really Jews would hinge on their position, their personal position, because the law of return hinges on your mother has to be a Jew, right? That's one of the, and you also have to be a practicing Jew. And also you can't believe in the New Testament narrative and Jesus being the Messiah because it hinges on being religiously a Jew as well. Or if you're going to be secular, at the very least that you have a mother who's a Jew and was a practicing Jew.
So my question was extremely specific. I asked you, anybody claiming to be a Jew via that law, via their maternal line. It was very specific.
Yes, so via the maternal line, I don't agree with the state of Israel's position because I think once we start looking into maternal lineage, there you're going to see a wide divergence, especially within the population, given that Ashkenazis have been tested and their maternal lineage, many of it, much of it actually comes from Europe, right?
Okay.
And also, you know, this would be the same for Yemeni Jews and other groups of Jews. But I think religiously, and I think this is where, and I wanted to add clarity, just if you just give me 1 minute, give me exactly 1 minute, Orthodox Moor, to answer this. So religiously, Jews that practice Judaism do not hinge their beliefs on the paternal side, right? They believe that you're a Jew authentically if your mother's a Jew. But what they mean by that is that if your mother's a Jew religiously, they don't hinge on the idea of bloodline descent. They hinge on the idea of religious affiliation. So if you're a practicing rabbinic Jew, then you are considered a Jew. And if your mother is a Jew, then you're a Jew. And if your father is a Jew, if you have, like, for example, a Kohen, then your tribal affiliation would be Levi, according to them, through the Kohen surname, right? But more specifically, religiously a Jew, because your father is religiously a Jew, your mother's religiously a Jew, then you're a Jew. Do you see how that works?
Yeah. Would it be incorrect to characterize your position as saying that Yahuchanan and you disagree with Yahuchanan's position and the state of Israel for people who identify autosomally and not paternally via the fact that it doesn't line up with the general argument in the scripture?
I would say yes, because I believe that there's a consistent narrative found in the Bible that Jews after the fact began to diverge from. So I think that they began to diverge from this position as the diaspora communities grew and they were scattered into different places.
Would it be incorrect to characterize your position that although the Bible generally lays out a certain position, it also has exceptions?
Of course, it has an exception in Numbers 27 and 8 for the one generation clause of a woman, the firstborn woman out of a household of women.
Would you consider what you cited in Chronicles also an exception?
Yes, that is an exception.
Appreciate you. Yahuchanan, I saw you, brother.
Right. And we see that those kids that come from Chronicles that they had, they were counted as Israelites and they were counted as descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Of course.
Okay, then. So then you agree with me. So why you see you agree?
So
You agree with me?
let me explain where. No, I disagree with the premise, but I agree with what you're saying right there. Let me explain to you. The premise that you presented is that if any of your DNA, it doesn't matter if you have wildly diverging DNA. So let's say you have a group of Moroccan Jews that have R1BV88, and then you have another Moroccan Jew that's E1B1B. Both of these are physical descendants of Jacob, because let's say someone has paternally the same DNA, R1BV88, and another person has E1B1 A or B or whatever, that because you have these Jews that also have these haplogroups accounted for within their populace, that they're both physically descended from Jacob. I think the idea has to be that we have to have a consistent DNA if we're talking paternally. Now, if we're talking just any part of your DNA, I don't think that the Bible, especially if you hold to a sola scriptura position, consistently accounts for that. What it does is it gives an exception if you don't have male inheritors. So then you have the exception clause of a woman taking the place of the male inheritor for one generation, not 3 generations, not 5 generations, not 10 generations. So therefore, once that one generation passes and she has when she has a male child, then the lineage goes right back through him. Why? Because his grandfather was a Jew through his mother. But then we know that he continues to carry the lineage. So the consistent narrative will be, and so-and-so begat so-and-so, and it's always the male. Peter begat Simon, and Simon begat Matthew, and Matthew begat Luke, and Luke begat like that.
Yeah.
What we don't see is Mary begat Martha, and Martha begat Priscilla, and Priscilla begat. Do you see the difference there?
I see what you're saying, but this is the thing. You got to understand what descendancy is, because if you even look up the word seed in Hebrew, it means offspring. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So it doesn't matter what. Let's just say one of David's daughters married a Canaanite. That child is still a descendant of David. You understand what I'm saying? Now,
repeat that last. I didn't hear that last part. Can you repeat that?
Let's just say one of David's daughters got married to a Canaanite, right? And they had a child. That child they had is still a descendant of David. The only thing is that child has no part in far as sitting on the kingdom, on the throne. He can't sit on the throne. And that's what I was saying. Hold on. And that's what I was saying.
David's grandmother was a Moabite. So is David a Moabite because his grandmother was a Moabite?
Yeah, he has Moabite descendancy.
So wait a minute. You believe
he's a descendant. He's an offspring of a Moabite.
But where is his lineage being traced through? Through the father.
Yeah, he traces his lineage through the father. But this is the thing. You cannot deny that he's the offspring of a Moabite, no matter what. His grandfather, hold up. His grandfather on his mother's side was a Moabite. So you can't not deny that.
So this is David ever called a Moabite in scripture?
No, he wasn't. But hold on, listen to what I'm saying. You got to hear me.
I got you.
He's the offspring of it. You understand what I'm saying? Now, far as let's just say my paternal side does not have any Israelite connection to it. Well, it doesn't do. Only way it counts is if I was going to be king or a priest, because those are the lineages, the offices of those offices. You had to have it from father to son passed down with those 2 offices. You understand what I'm saying? So I am an offspring,
unless there was the exception clause, because then you could also have the exception clause there.
But
Christ,
even Christ, he's the
lineage of David through Mary, right?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So
but for that generation, though, that's important to know, because then through him, it's clear he's a male inheritor, right? So the key there is, if Mary would have had a daughter, her daughter wouldn't have been the Messiah. Her daughter wouldn't have been counted, right? It had to be a male inheritor, correct?
As far as what? Male inheritance?
As far as the Messiah had to be a male, correct?
Yeah. For the Messiah.
Right? And then even when he chose his apostles, they were all males, correct?
Yeah. But check this out though. Let's look at the dude who's picking sticks. Let's look at the dude who's picking sticks. He was a mixed child. He had an Israelite mother and he had an Egyptian father, and they killed him. But he was still accounted as a hold up. Let me finish.
He was accounted as a stranger in that chapter.
Was he accounted? Okay, hold on. Relax, Faith. Relax.
No, I'm just saying in Leviticus 24.
If he was accounted as a stranger, then I thought he was accounted as an Israelite. But if he was accounted as a stranger, then hey, I can concede. I go back and look that up later. But my thing is this though: you are offspring, no matter what. Offspring meaning you're a descendant of those people. Like even though Abraham sent Ishmael away, he was still a descendant. He was still an offspring of Abraham, bro. You understand what I'm saying? He was still an offspring, bro. He's got Abraham's DNA in his. He's got Abraham's DNA in his genes.
Yeah, Abraham was his father, bro. Again, you're proving my point. It's the consistent narrative. The general narrative is the father side. I think you're proving my point, and you're kind of showing the flaw in your position.
No, because listen, no matter what
never called a Moabite. Hold on, David is never called a Moabite, even though he had a grandmother. You know, his maternal lineage had a grandmother, but it's not counting that lineage. It's counting paternal side.
Yeah, he's got his paternal side, but it still does not deny the fact that he is a descendant of a Moabite. You can't get it. He had Moabite in his genes.
I'm not denying it. I'm not denying.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. You can't. So you can't deny that. You have a Moabite in his genes. What I'm saying is that,
but the biblical narrative consistently identifies him as a Jew from Judah and not as a Moabite. Is what I'm trying to get you to understand.
I'm not saying that he was identified as a Moabite. You're missing the point. He still had Moabite in his genes. That's what I'm trying to tell you. No matter what, if you're trying to say my mother's side or my father's side, it doesn't even matter. Yo, Isaac and Jacob is still in my genes. It's part of my DNA. You can't get away from that.
But biblically speaking, if you were to trace a genealogy, at the very best, if you were somehow a part of the nation of Israel back then, you would be a convert. You would be a stranger. You would be considered amongst a stranger because your paternal side wouldn't have been considered an Israelite DNA if we're going to go with a consistent narrative of what we believe to be.
Well, if we know what the paternal side is, then that's another question. We don't really
that's
know.
Another question, right?
We don't really know what the paternal haplogroup is for those people. It's an assumption. We can only come up with a hypothesis that is J or a hypothesis that is E.
Yeah,
or
science hypothesis J1 is being
okay, man. Can I finish?
I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all a hypothesis that we can come up with. We don't know consistently. You understand what I'm saying? We don't know per se, but we do know in First Chronicles that Shushan grandkids who came from an Egyptian, we do know that they were counted as Israelites, and their children so forth on and so forth on was counted as Israelites as long as they're being a part of that community.
Although their grandfather was a Jew, Shushan was a Jew.
Yeah,
and his daughter was a Jew because her father was a Jew.
That's what I'm saying.
And then because of the exception clause, then the male would be considered a Jew. And notice that it goes on through the male. No longer you see like any mention of a daughter because all the male children produce male children. So then therefore the lineage was counted consistently through the males after that one.
Because of that one mother. I understand.
Who had a Jew.
All righty then.
And that's all I've been saying the whole time.
Okay. Hey.
The whole time.
All right. Listen, man, it's about to be 4 p.m. I want to say peace and love to everybody. Thank you for joining the show. If you guys want to continue, I'll start a whole new show where y'all could go back and forth for 10 hours. But I'm going to cut the show off. All right.
Yeah, shout out to Garfield for letting us have that build. I thought it was an interesting discussion. Like I said, me and Yahuchanan are going to go in on the whole thing and replay the whole thing and recap it at one point this week. Sometime this week. They were getting in for like I think 2.5 hours before I got there. They was getting in for a minute, like Yahuchanan was showing his DNA, and they was going back and forth. It was an interesting back and forth. Appreciate that Garfield let us have that build on his platform, uninterrupted. I might add, at least on my side, on my portion of it. And with Faithful, I would like to invite you to come on the debate talk for you and have a build with me on the whole topic of what you were talking about. Because when we recap the whole video, you'll see that it seems, and I'll say it seems, all right, air quotation, it seems as if Faith was making the argument that the J1 is the default Israelite marker, an Israelite haplogroup or whatnot. And so I would definitely like to get his understanding on that. And in another situation, I would definitely like to understand how he's saying the exception clause applies to Jesus. I wasn't quite clear on what he was talking about that. So I would definitely like to have the brother come on and break down those concepts. And as you've seen, one, the Sal's channel, I know I'm going to disrespect that channel, but two, You've seen me sit down with Abu and have very respectful conversations, and he and I disagree on the pews. Like, he believes there's no language on the pews. I believe there's multiple different languages potentially on the pews, and I definitely affirm Arabic on the pews, etc. And we were able to have a very cordial conversation. So yeah, you'll be able to take off and land, etc. When I host over there, I definitely build a little bit different than when I jump on other people's panels. So you'll get I give a little bit more room to take off and land when I host versus when I'm a guest. So no worries about that. There won't be any talking over each other. You'll be able to finish everything before I come in with the second question, etc. Because over on Sal's channel, the concept is just to get the information out there and trying to see what the positions actually are, etc. But with that, I wanted to jump into some things I wanted to point out about what I thought I heard Faithful saying. So one, I thought I heard Faithful talk about this concept of so there's a couple things I want to recognize. It seems as though, let me do it like this. And let me stop doing that. No way. It seems as though Faithful had laid out an issue with what Yahuchanan was saying in terms about an autosomal argument, saying that Numbers 27 and 8 limits maternal descent or descent to a female to one generation. Hold on, let me share my screen for this one as well. Bada bing, bada bang, bada boom. So yeah, hold on, let me change that up. Yeah, we do it like that. Yeah, so we can see on the screen it says, "And thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a man die and have no son, then ye shall cause his inheritance to pass unto his daughter." And it says there again, "And if he have no daughter, then ye shall give his inheritance unto his brethren." Now, when I read this, I don't see anything limiting that descent to one generation. That inheritance and descent to one generation. Meaning this. So let's say that daughter doesn't have any sons. Because it seems like everything that Faithful was saying was predicated on the fact that it was assumed that this daughter would have sons. So what if she doesn't have sons? What if she only has daughters? And by the way, Faithful, just to be clear, I didn't say this on the show with Garfield because I was trying to save time. I had some stuff to do and whatnot. But in a discussion, I would definitely break down that in Islam and in the Quran, that no, women get sons and daughters are automatically get shares of inheritance, and the husband and the father and mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, etc. They have their own. Everybody's supposed to do their own inheritance thing, to where everyone got their own wills and all them type of things. So women will have their own bequeathments that they give their children, their husbands, etc. whatnot. Men have their own bequeathments that they give their children, their wives, their parents, all that type of stuff. But we can definitely break that down on the conversation. But again, here I don't see anything that limits this to one generation. So let's say that this daughter only has daughters. Does that mean that she can't give the inheritance to the daughter? No, this same law would apply. Let's say that second daughter only has daughters. Would she be cut off with the inheritance? No, you pass it on. There's nothing about this that limits it to one generation that I see in any way, shape, or form. In any way, shape, or form. But beyond that, and this is something I want to definitely talk to you about in terms of the assumption on the J1 marker. And this is why I asked the question about the multiple haplogroups concept. And again, you seem to agree on the concept of there being multiple haplogroups within national Israel, and that sojourners and tribal Israel are counted the same. And so when you kept talking about the sojourners and people being converts, it seems like you were straddling a fence, and like on one side they're Israelites, but on another side that like you can't claim descendancy from them. And I'm not certain where you draw that from the scripture, because I don't see it like that. I've never seen it to where sojourners don't have inheritance. From my understanding, sojourners definitely have it. Like, so if I descend from sojourners, I get the inheritance of the sojourners. Like, so if my father's a sojourner, it's not like I don't get inheritance where my father had inheritance. But again, just to deal with this concept of his argument, return fire argument of the conundrum of what if there's only female descent. Yeah, there's nothing that limits it to just one generation as I read it. If there's a secondary scripture somewhere that you can pull, brother man, I would love to break that down in a discussion and whatnot. But as it stands, I don't see anything limited to one generation. But on the other hand, there was this bit about like, so Yahuchanan is R1B, in that the R1B V88, in that that wouldn't work. And I'm trying to figure it out because my man literally cited the Egyptian concept in Chronicles. And so real quick, when I go there, hold on, let me do this and do this. When I go to Chronicles, I see this here, right? I literally see 14 generations of people with an Egyptian father and an Israelite mother. So that means, like, my man kept saying, like, so in that in his argument, he kept saying that that one time where the daughter gets the inheritance, the first time she has a son, then that lineage gets everything, and then that's counted as Israel. All right, cool. No issue with that. Okay, like, we can argue over the limitation of the one generation concept, but okay, because even if you do that, like the one generation, the tie, right? Like, he has his father's paternal haplogroup, and so we're seeing here that a tie begat Nathan, Nathan begat Zabad, Zabad begat Eflal, Eflal begat Obed, Obed begat Jehu, Jehu begat Azariah, Azariah begat Helez, Helez begat Eliasah, Eliasah begat Sisamai, Sisamai begat Shalom, Shalom begat Jechemiah, Jechemiah begat Elishama. Like, so to me, that okay, so that's 14 generations of that paternal haplogroup that is now embedded within a Judean house. Now embedded within a Judean house. So via Faithful's argument, as I understand it, Faithful, you're saying that child, the tie, for instance, right, that he's picking up the lineage from his grandfather. That he's picking up the lineage from his grandfather. So you're talking about 14 generations of a subclade within Judah that is now a different paternal haplogroup than his grandfather, but is being counted as Israel. And not just any paternal group, a paternal group from Egypt, an Egyptian. Now, this was also brought up in Leviticus 24, where there's an Egyptian male, the son of an Egyptian male, and an Israelite female as well there, that's being dealt with as an Israelite. And it's not specified whether he's a sojourner or natural born or as Israelite, but it's specified that he's dealt with either, or he's dealt with the same law. There's one law that applies to both, and it applied to him, and he got dealt with via that law. Right? So I don't think Faithful would disagree on that. But with this here, I want to point something out. Here's a legitimate question. What is the potential haplogroup of this Egyptian? Because my man's saying that it's not possible. Like, it's like, if even like, so like Faithful told my man Yahuchanan that because he's R1B V88, that he's either the child of a convert, or he's the descendant of a convert, or most likely a European male, which is a ridiculous assumption on both parts. It's a ridiculous assumption. And I would really like, on that one, I would like to see how my man walks that one out scholastically, because it doesn't make scholastic sense. And I would really like to see how he walks that one out. Again, respectfully, I'll give you all the time you need to take off and land. All the time. We can even give you as much time as you want to just put it on a timer. You know what I'm saying? But and here's why I asked this question, and I'm gonna put some stuff up on the screen right quick. Hold up, let me do them like this. Put some banners up right quick. Yeah, man. So we actually have ancient DNA from mummies and digs from within the land of Canaan and from within Egypt, etc. So we know what a whole bunch of different haplogroups are that come out that area. So, for instance, we know that there's possible the Egyptians had J1, they had J2, they had E1B1B, they had R1B. Hold on. Oh, there we go. They had R1B, and then they also have Canaanites with R1B. We have people in Canaan, people in Israel with J. We have people in Egypt with E1B1A. So that Egyptian could have been J1, J2. The Egyptian that started 14 generations of a subclade in Israel could have been J1, J2, E1B1B, R1B, E1B1A. Could have been any one of those. But again, check this out. So we have a Canaanite nobleman in Israel 3,300 years ago, R1B. We have King Tut, again, 3,300 years ago, Egypt, similar time period, R1B. That Egyptian very well could have been R1B that started 14 generations, you know what I'm saying, of a subclade within Judah, within the house of Judah, being counted as Israelites. Very well could have been R1B. And let's say this applies to another haplogroup. Even if it's just one generation, like again, you're creating a subclade of another haplogroup within the first one. So in Leviticus 24, Faithful said that that the son was considered a sojourner. But here in Chronicles, he's saying that no, the children here were considered Israel. So I would really like to understand how my man accounts for the possibility. Like, okay, like, so is he assuming that the Egyptian was J1? Because it's very possible he could have been J1, J2, E1B1A, E1B1B, and R1B. So what if he was R1B? So now, so let's just assume that Faithful's correct, right? And that J1 is the Israelite marker. Okay, cool. We'll just assume that for right now. So Judah would be a J1 marker, but now there's this subclade of an Egyptian haplogroup within this tribe of Israel being counted as Israel, not sojourners. Faithful's agreeing that they're being counted as Israel. So, one, I would like to know what's the issue if they were sojourners, tracing lineage back to them, because at first you're saying that the sojourners are considered Israel anyway, and we can see in Leviticus 24 that even the sojourners are still being dealt with the same law as Israel. So I'm trying to understand what's the issue, even if Yahuchanan's DNA goes back to a sojourner, right? But secondarily, like how can you definitively stipulate that R1B can't be a marker within tribal Israel when we see that via the same Chronicles, First Chronicles citation, that we see that there is 14 generations of people in the tribe of Judah being counted as Judah via what Faithful's even saying. but they have an Egyptian paternal haplogroup that could potentially be R1b. Potentially. It has to be ruled out. And it's got to be definitely ruled out because you see it not only in Egypt, but you find it in Canaan. You find it in Israel. So, yeah, I would definitely love to have a conversation with Faithful based upon that conversation, based upon this information here. And again, brother man, it would definitely be respectful, 100% respectful. Like I said, ain't knowing everyone disrespects Allah's platform like that. And two, I'd like to talk about the questions I asked here, but three, I'd like to use me as an example as well. Like I was trying to say in those in our build, I didn't get to finish, but I wanted to use me as an example because you can use me and put a lot of different interesting scenarios out there, right? Because of my specific lineage. I have it like, so you said you saw some of my videos. I implore you to go back and check out my DNA videos that I've done, where I break down my haplogroups and the haplogroups of my parents and whatnot. So my father's Y DNA is EM33 and his paternal DNA is L2B. My mother's father was EM34 and her maternal DNA is A2G. So 3 of my 4 haplogroups are African, right? The last one is Native American. You can go through my DNA videos and get my actual genetic breakdown of what I actually am and see how that all makes sense. But here's the thing that I would really like to talk about. So one, my father's DNA, you can find in East Africa, West Africa, but you can also find it amongst Moroccan males, right? Not the Jews, but like the Berbers and whatnot, right? The L2B, his mother's lineage, right? You can find that all the way in Mozambique, but you can also find it all the way amongst the Moroccan Jewish people as one of their maternal haplogroups. My mother's father links with Yemenite Jews, Ethiopian Jews, Moroccan Jews, Sephardic Jews, and Ashkenazi Jews, and is considered to be one of the potential haplogroups of Abraham. So I know my man's talking about the J1 concept, and it seems like he's making a large assumption on it. And this is why I'd like to have this conversation, because my mother's father's haplogroup, paternal haplogroup, EM34, we find that in the land of Canaan. It's basically in the Tufin and whatnot. And again, we find it amongst a whole bunch of Jews. And you can find a very interesting migration pattern based upon the percentage if you really look at it, which I'll definitely get into on a whole other set of videos. But so scientists are stipulating this is potentially one of the haplogroups that they're narrowing down for Abraham, because you have people in the lineage of the Prophet Muhammad called the Sayyids who have this haplogroup, and you have people who are in the Kohanim that have this haplogroup. So like the priestly orders of both like Ishmael and in Israel, etc. Ishmael and Isaac, right? So they're narrowing it down based upon that. Like, so I heard him talk about J1 and like an E1B1B. Yeah, this is a clade of E1B1B. So here's an interesting thing, right? So I am like I'm the caretaker of my grandfather's oldest son, who has no children. My grandfather on my mother's side, right? My grandfather has no surviving children, but my oldest or his son, my uncle, which is his oldest son, and my mother, which is his youngest child. So, my uncle literally has my uncle has no children in his special needs and will most likely never have children. So in this case, There is no descent beyond my mother. So I'm potentially this Numbers 27:8 situation, right? And this whole First Chronicle situation, right? To where I have the EM33 haplogroup, but I would be in direct descendancy of my grandfather, who is potentially in the direct descendancy or has the same haplogroup as Abraham, potentially. And this is scientific. This is a legit argument happening right now. It's just as legit as the J1 argument. Just as. And you could make arguments for more. But I'll just say just as legit as the J1 argument. So, one, I would like to have a conversation based upon my father's L2B lineage, right, on his maternal side, and just discuss some stuff based upon that and potentialities and arguments and whatnot. But I would definitely like to use myself as this Numbers 27 situation, because either my kids would be Israelites with an EM33 haplogroup, which would be something completely different than Abraham's. Something completely different than Abraham's. If the EM34 would be that one, right? If you just assume that for a second that the EM34 is Abraham's DNA. My EM33 would be completely different than my grandfather's, but my children would be considered Israelites. So would their lineage be able to claim Israel or no? I would really like that one broken down. If you want to, you can bring on Abu. We can have Yahuchanan come on. We can have a whole discussion and whatnot. I'm sure if you want to debate the topic at one point as well after the discussion, I'm sure Yahuchanan would love to debate you on Debate Talk Few. I'd have absolutely no issue moderating the debate on the topic. You already know I've moderated a bunch of debates for people of different beliefs, including vocab, and I always moderate down the middle. Even the one West Israelite, when I was moderating against with him and my people from the War Machine, said I was being fair. So there is that. But yeah, I've already gone on for an hour. I'm not going to bore y'all, family. I appreciate y'all for spending some time here. And I'm going to cut out right about here. And while I do, I'm going to satisfy a request from a sister from the chat. Shout out to Melanated Goddess. Matter of fact, let me do this. Shout out to Melanated Goddess. Shout out to Ashley Just Souls. Peace to y'all. Shalom and peace to y'all. Shout out to Shalom in the chat. Peace and shalom to you. Peace and blessings to Negi Springfield in the chat. Peace and blessings to my brother Asking Moore. Peace and blessings to Sean Harris. Shalom fam. And with that, family, I'm going to end out. Like I said on request, I was gonna do it anyway, sis. But yeah, I got a couple of Minister Howard joints and whatnot. So I appreciate y'all for spending time with me, family. Hope there was something edifying in all this for you. And like I said, faithful, I would really like to sit down and build with you, fam, and ask some serious questions. We can get into all my stuff about my beliefs on the DNA. We can make it a two-way street. We can make it a complete two-way street. Because like I was saying, I've never made my positions known or whatnot. But yeah, I think it would be very beneficial for the people for us to have the conversation on both sides. What I believe, what you believe, etc. And really get to the crux of it. I think it would be a very interesting conversation. But with that, family, I say peace and love, and I hope y'all have a fantastic rest of your day.
The ripple effect, when we do not give our temple the proper respect. I'm talking total neglect. Insufficient fun, but you still wrote them a check. I'm not holding my breath. I'm rapping like I am the only one here. I don't have nowhere to feel.
They know I'm a threat, ain't no one exempt, I'm making it clear. I'm nothing like them, steadily moving up despite them. I smite them, outright them, that's how I fight them. My light shining so bright they blind them. They tryna find them, and I remind them how far behind them their mind is. See what my mind is, can't see how high that climb is. If you don't go, then I will. Take one step in that minefield, don't see how thin that line is. I'm trusting God where I live, my kinfolk know that I'm real. My heart and soul what I give, and that's okay, cause when they see me they tell me what's up. Throwing me the deuce from the cut, pouring out the liquor in the cups. When I walk by they putting out the blunts. May not sound like much, but for me it's more than enough. Yeah, this is hood where I come from. Yeah, been real since day one. Yeah, I represent the city of Atlanta. Everybody looking for some answers. Now I gotta lead by example. Boy, you wanna talk tough when you on camera. You can't handle the mantle, quickly you get dismantled. You don't live by no standards, therefore I cancel your channel. Commander, name one thing you in command of. You don't even know what you stand for, the only thing you can do is slander. Now man up, boy, stand up. Police come through, put your hands up. Bananas up, your fan club banana. Understand us, bandanas and tattoos of teardrops and bandos. Black and white, not harmonizing piano. Got that plug Fernando. Drop it off Alejandro. Slowly turn doorknob handle. Go to war with more ammo than Rambo. I'm learning my life inside my sermons. Got snatched right out the furnace. Go ask my cousin Ernest. So long I've been determined to eradicate all you vermin and allocate all my earnings to get what I'm deserving. In this life I earned it. No white man, no black man, no Jew man gon' stop me or block me or mock me. Just watch me. I came back like the Mark D, harder than government block cheese. Push button, no car keys. This art form is a part of me. This world so cold, my heart freeze. Unthaw me, Lord. Even when I didn't realize it, you still saw me, Lord. My prayers that the brotherhood can get on one accord, cause we cannot afford anyone sowing seeds of discord.
Too many tanks on the ground. Too many tanks. Too many tanks on the ground.
Y'all ain't war machine.
Too many tanks. Too many.
I can tell that you wanna see me losing control at the same time losing my soul. Trying to move on the low, but you still can't escape from the view on the scope. If you move, you a ghost. When the tank's on the ground, better move out the road. Gotta flow like a hookah lounge, who won't smoke? If you choose to provoke, I might loosen the rope enough not to leave a bruise on your throat. The movement's strong, yeah. Strong enough to make a bunch of grown men spray hatred like cologne. We got too much out here going on in the path you traveling, rocky Sylvester Stallone. But you would not leave it alone. Michael B. Jordan trying to get a creed of your own. Just leave me alone. How you gonna talk like a boss? You don't even own the keys to your home. You don't wanna see me in the zone. Blood of a king in my veins, I belong on the throne with a queen of my own. Infatuated by the muscle tone of my body, love squeezing my arm. If we in the war with the other side, why you not taking shots at the other guy? Let me summarize, you advertise black on black crime and antagonize. When I analyze it with my higher mind, I miss my Virgo nature with the fire sign. I can see it clearly through my third eye, point of view higher than the birds fly. No code of honor like the samurai, they just target practice for me bullseye. You a clout chaser working full time and your paradigm is a narrow mind. All the angels in heaven listen when I'm sharing mine. I'm giving back to the culture, I'm in the back of the Rover. Why you at home with your back on the sofa? I'm having a moment, your childish behavior, I'm sorry, I cannot condone it. The double-edged sword that I'm swinging, sharp enough to cut your bones through your garment. Yeah, Rock Nation signed a deal with the NFL recently, that's a bonus. And I just wanna know what percentage you getting paid off for your performance. Hold up, Jay-Z, he don't even know you. Nope. Trademark name who belong to. 6-figure check, no console. Come to a point where you can't undo what you misconstrue. Every day you attack Jesus, animated like Black Jesus. For that reason, he's still undefeated like Gorilla Hebrew from last season. The war machine running circles around our competition like track season. It's hard for you to be a stand-up guy, cause in the spirit world, your back leaning. I'm sick with it, got me throwing up. PowerPoint ready, they ain't showing up. No information, just inflammation. Amazon book sales going up. But I wouldn't buy it, even if I was on a diet and had a little money on the side. I wouldn't try it, even if my life was on the line and they pointing at my body with the 9. Why should I tell them a whole bunch of lies just for them to join my side? El Shaddai, all praise to the Most High. If the Spirit walking with me, I'm fine. You cannot make a decision. I can see that you afraid of the system. I can tell you have no faith in your vision. You rather sit back and hate on religion. I bet you won't walk in the government building and tell them that you want an interview. Tell them that your name is Nimrod and you demand justice and call them a criminal. Burn up their literature right there in front of them. I guarantee you gon' make the news. At least you be finally famous. Look at the camera like, mama, I made it. Have you ever stood in front of the very personification of hatred? I have on many occasions. The devil got multiple faces. Look at the swing of the pendulum. Look at the shape of the pentagon. I walk in the power of Pentecost. I show up and mess with your pentagram. Tanks on the ground, man.
Too many tanks on the ground. Too many.